Yeah, g'day, Bush Camping Tools here. Well, I want to talk about this new watch in my arsenal of watches. And generally, you know, I buy a watch, well, I buy a watch to wear. I don't buy a watch just to take on and off for work or etc. to go out. So I'm wearing them 24/7. And you've seen my review on my Seiko Prospex 200 meter diver. Well, this is to this eco drive here, this Citizen eco drive. It's the BN0176 08E 300 meter saturation diving watch, and this is replacing my still working, but it's lost the Bezel Citizen 78 movement 200 meter diving watch, which has served me very well diving. This of course is like over the top, you know, maybe there's some saturation diving coming in the future, but certainly good enough for scuba diving and diving, regular diving, this watch. It's a big watch, but it's not hugely big, and I'll show you a comparison in a minute to my Seiko, which is about the same. The actual dial, the face on the Seiko is bigger than this watch on here, but what I like about this is, just listen to that. The bezel, it's really easy to turn. It's much easier to turn, and if you've got gloves on, I'll put some gloves on in a minute and show you some dive gloves, and you can see that it's much, it's very easy to get your fingers with gloves on in these notches of the bezel here. It's an eco drive watch, and if you're not familiar with the eco drive models from Citizen, they're solar powered watches, and as the name says, you know, powered from the sun. I've got it in full sun now. For this particular watch, it needs about 11 hours of full sunlight to get a full charge on the rechargeable battery inside of it. My other eco drive has been running for 20 years non-stop without missing a beat, no secondhand skipping every 2 seconds, which is an indicator of the low battery state in an eco drive. This particular model has a 6-month battery charge capacity, so with one, you know, after a good 11 hours it can last 6 months without seeing the light again, which is really great. It's a screw-in crown, of course, and it comes in the ProMaster series. There's 3 series, if you like, in the ProMaster. They're marine, they're sky, and they're land watches. This sits second below the 1,000 meter depth rating dive watch, which is more of a really big tool rather. It's a bit too big to wear except for work. This one can be worn for work and leisure as well too. By work I mean doing lots of diving or just extreme outdoor stuff. Okay, so what about some specs of this that may not be so obvious? That is the crystal is actually, it's not sapphire, it's a mineral crystal. It's been treated with an anti-reflective coating on there. It may look quite reflective here now at the moment because I have actually put on this a notepad screen protector. I've got that on all my dive watches, which have got a flat face, and it just stops you know, the mineral crystal from getting scratched up. It's pretty good actually, and I've had one on there now for over a year on one of my watches. It hasn't come off in swimming, surfing, sand, diving, everything, including in the shower. This is about the only time you'll see me with the watch off like this, showing it in a review, because normally I'm wearing a watch 24/7. I wear it to bed, in the shower, everywhere. And the funny thing is, if I'm not wearing a watch, I kind of feel a bit naked, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I've just grown up with dive watches, lots of swimming action, diving, and so I'm kind of used to it. So many out there want to know, you know, is this watch too big? They like the look of the watch. They may not even be a diver, but they like the look of the watch. And it does look really rugged, and it is really rugged. You know, you can take this caving, all sorts of things. It's going to handle the pace. But they want to know, is it too big for the wrist? Well, I don't think it is, but I'm kind of the wrong person also at the same time to be asking that, because, you know, I'm just used to wearing these watches. But one of the other things I want to address is the band. Now, this band is a urethane compound material, and urethane is really great because it's really strong, really resists chemicals, and it has a lot of great properties. And I've actually blogged about this watch extensively and continue to do so. But one of the issues that, or people think it's an issue, is the stickiness of the band, and it's difficult to get this watch on and off really quickly. Well, I would argue and I would say that that's not really an issue, because this watch is meant to be worn diving, and the last thing you want is the band to come undone because this is too slippery. that's how easy it is to get on the band. I don't think the band is a problem at all with this watch. And as I said, you know, the bezels, if I put my dive gloves on, you know, diving is instant, but you know, you're going to change the time on the surface. You know, it's really it's so easy, you know. If you're taking a watch on and off a lot, well, you're going to lose it, and you don't want to lose a watch like this. So some people have put adapters. You can put adapters on here. These are like proprietary pin sets in here on this watch, and there are actually arrows indicating underneath of here the direction the pin has to come out. It has to be taken out with some jeweler's tools. I wouldn't recommend that unless you are really confident with that sort of thing. But some people have taken these straps off and replaced them with special adapters on here, and I've listed where you could get those too in my blog. And that way you can put an ordinary 22mm strap across there, and some may like to do that. But for diving, this is perfectly good enough. And for me, I like this stickiness of this watch band on there. And as I said, urethane is a tough material. Right, of course, being a dive watch, it's got a screw-in crown on here. And as I said earlier on, you know, this watch is really intended. This is in their professional series, in the ProMaster series professional watches. It's even got it written on the side here. And this one sports a helium escape valve here. And essentially, if you don't know it already, you know, helium being such a small molecule, it can easily penetrate structures which other atoms of gas molecules can't, right? And over time, helium can get in. However, on the blurb on the Japanese website for this model, and by the way, the BN0176 08E is still listed as a current 2020 model on the Japanese website. However, I note the US citizen site is discontinuing this particular model. It was released in Basel World, I believe, in Switzerland. It was announced in 2016, so it's been now for 4 years running a current model. But anyway, yeah, the helium escape valve on the Japanese site, they say that this is actually proof against helium. So I'm assuming that the watch is opened up, the crown is undone in a bell, or probably in the chamber. You wouldn't probably undo it inside the diving bell, but in the chamber. And helium has got into it and undergoing decompression. You want that helium to escape. So it's a one-way valve. Nothing can go in here, essentially, but helium molecules can escape, gas molecules can escape out of that. Otherwise, you're going to blow the crystal on the watch face. Okay, I want to just talk about what's on the back. On these EcoDrive watches, they're sealed up, you know, and it says, you know, do not open it, right? This is only for a service from citizen, okay? Do not open, service center repair only. The other thing that states on the back here that this is a Japanese movement, citizen watch company, and it's okay for helium gas diving, Japanese movement down here. And on the front too, this particular model, it might be a bit hard to see, but in there too, it says it's got a Japanese movement, that E168 EcoDrive movement, with the date at the 4 o'clock position. The ones on the Japanese website don't show that writing on there. This is probably a US version for the US market. Right, another feature of this watch is the outer bezel, stainless steel bezel, has been coated with what Citizen called their DuraTect, like their version of a DLC film, which stands for diamond-like carbon. It's a amorphous kind of diamond film-like film. It's very, very tough, and this thing actually does increase the resistance to abrasion from sand in the water, all those sorts of things like that that could abrade around the outside of here. So it gives it this two-tone, but without painting it, which will definitely wear off on there very easily. And this also reduces the friction. So if it actually has the DLC coating underneath of it, presumably it does, how it's been put in the under the PVD process, the physical vapor deposition, this will mean it's coated underneath. So it will also reduce the friction for the rotation of the bezel there as well. And it adds this highlight on the watch itself, rather than just have straight stainless steel on the bezel itself. I kind of like it. It looks really cool. but it also serves a functional purpose. And Citizen, the Citizen Watch Company Limited, they actually have many patents on surface film treatments. When you start examining the patents and looking at what their scientists are up to. So they really know what they're doing with this stuff. Not only sand in the water to resist abrasion, it's also, you know, sand on your diving gloves too, you know, or muddy water. Not always diving in clean water, especially if you're diving for work. You know, you may not get the choice of water to be diving in, and it's going to be muddy, murky water, and it will help to, you know, resist abrasion on the outside there. But I just want to show you this trick from diving. If you're somewhere where you don't have much fresh water to spare, like on an island when you're diving or on a boat, but you've got to wash your watch, and it's important to keep the watch washed and soaked, you can use a small, like, Tupperware kind of container like this. You know, you would put the watch inside of and let it soak in there, and it only uses a small amount of water. Now, if you don't have something like that, the other thing which is just as good is a plastic bag, like a Ziploc bag. You see it there, right? And you can put the watch in there with a little bit of water, and you don't need much. Of course, don't leave the watch in the sun, the bag in the sun, but you can use that system to a bag there like that. So you don't need much water to keep the watch washed. You can just put the watch in there like that, put the lid on it, and that will wash the watch. So there's a little tip for you divers out there that, you know, have only been washing your watch, waiting till you get home and wash it in the sink at home or something like that. Okay, the other thing about this watch is, you know, you've got these big, chunky, luminous markers, hour markers, and hand on there, and having a fluorescent orange minute hand is a really good idea, because the deeper you go, of course, you've got, you know, only the blue wavelengths are going to penetrate, and this kind of fluoresces under blue light. I mean, you're not going to be under blue light diving essentially, but blue white wavelengths are going to penetrate the deepest, and it will be easily seen. And I've shown this in a blog, in a dry test sort of thing, in one of my blogs on this watch, looking under different colored lights, under violet and then blue light, and it's really very easy to see this fluorescent orange. This sister model to this watch, the 175 BN0175, it's got fluorescent green, day glow green on here. That's the full DLC model, where it's DLC coated everywhere, DLC film on everything. And that day glow green, I know from diving, I've seen people's fins. I don't have them, but dive with others with fins that color. It's very easy to see at depth, and so this will be easy to see at depth and in the dark. Now, talking about the Lume on here, this luminous phosphorescent material on there, it's really quite good. I've compared it with my Seiko's Lume Bright, and I would say it lasts just as long. Citizen are calling this their luminescent A material, which they say only needs a couple of seconds exposure to bright light in order to glow for a long time, emit for a long time, and I can say that's the case. And okay, some of the lesser known features about this watch is this. The second hand, it features hacking on here, so you can stop it precisely at the 12 o'clock position, or any position for that matter, with the crown, according to the instruction book on there. I'm going to say there is a slight, you know, maybe it's not really a negative thing. I mean, for diving, you're really interested in the minute hand. That's why that's so easily marked there with, you know, fluorescent orange. And you need to know your elapsed minutes if you're, regardless of what kind of diving you're doing, and especially just for recreational diving, not even using this to its professional, you know, maximum in saturation diving. But you know, you've got the hour hand here, and you see it's almost very similar to the hour markers on the watch, and it can be a bit difficult. You know, sometimes you might have to do a second glance to work out what the time is, because you've got to see this, distinguish this. The contrast between this and the hour markers is nothing. It's the same sort of thing, but you get used to it, kind of thing. That's why I said, you know, my previous Eco Drive watch, which has been on many diving and surfing and water activities, including caving, I've seen lots of mud and sand and everything, has lasted me 20 years. People are asking, you know, how long do these Eco Drive batteries last for? Well, I'm going to tell you, I reckon, you know, if this lasts as long as the 78 movement, this is E168, as I said, on this watch here, I'll be really pleased. All right, so there you go. Okay, want to just do a size comparison between this Citizen and my Seiko Prospects, and I'm just going to put this Seiko next to it there. Let's get a closer look at that. Okay, this is the two of them lined up together, and you see the Prospects is no bigger. In fact, it's about the same case diameter almost. The case diameter is almost identical. The difference is, you know, you've got this shroud on the Seiko here, and you don't have a shroud on the Citizen. Let me turn them around here so you can see them like that. You see, I've changed the band on my Seiko too. I put a Velcro one on there because I gave it to my young son to wear on his more active wrist as a automatic. But they're pretty similar in size there. Now I'll just turn them side on there if I can to look at the thickness, and they're about the same really. There's no difference in thickness really in reality in practical size. So if you like the size of the Seiko, you're going to like the size of this Citizen. But as I said, I'm used to wearing big dive watches. Okay, my previous dive watch, my Eco Drive, it was a slimline model, the 200 meter with a 78 movement, and it is of course much smaller than this as a dive watch, and it's still pretty rugged, but the bezel still pretty rugged, but the bezel failed on it eventually. And okay, after 20 years, what can you expect? Okay, so what can I say about this watch? I really love it. I love the design itself. The functionality is great for me and the activities that I do. Wearability, I reckon it's really wearable. I'm not one of these people that are put off by some, you know, Wally superior telling me that my watch is not suitable for work. It's not a dress watch. I've never been into dress watches. You know, a dress watch on my wrist is going to break in the first 5 minutes of wearing it, you know, because I'm just, you know, I dunk my hand in the water and it's going to leak, you know. So that's me personally. I'm just not into dress watches. But this watch, yeah, it's really wearable. I really love it.